looking for her very own sunshine. All alone in her fate, many roads to travel time, but she don't mind. Lost child.
Here again on the Russ Meek Speak Show, Lester Blair, here to talk about the world of AI with a sharp individual who's been in the program a few times. Tell us how we can make this whole world change from AI. Is that going to be the case, sir?
Well, change is forever. That's
Okay.
the one constant that I know. And I tend to be uncomfortable when things don't change.
Okay.
We've got 8.5 billion people on the planet, so we have lots of opportunity for change. So with AI is just another instance of a particular type of change. And so what I'd like to talk about today are three areas. One is, let's take the fear that's being propagated and spread all over the place about AI, and let's turn that to curiosity. And then the second thing I want to talk about is time, because I'm constantly hearing about how time is speeding up, and time is not speeding up. Time is 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour. What is happening with time is we are cramming more things into a given amount of time. That's what's happening. Then the third area is, let's talk about what the individual can do relative to AI.
Okay.
So, fear mostly is something you don't understand. So when you're afraid of something, a lot of times it's because you don't understand how that works. And we live in a very complicated, complex world.
With Donald Trump.
Well, that's just a slice of the complication.
Okay.
And you've got one individual with a group of people who their position seems to be confuse everybody, and while everybody's confused, I can go and do what I want to do without people bothering me. But with regard to AI, what is confusing about AI right now is that there are different architectures. So when you hear about these language models, ChatGPT is probably one that most people know. Like automobiles, you have different cars, you have different models of cars. We are now getting into different architectures of AI.
Okay. Which is led by my favorite company.
Yes, and so
NVIDIA.
if you're making the hardware and you've got stock in NVIDIA, ride the pony until the pony stops
Yes.
situation. But what you're going to be seeing in 26 is you're going to start to see more and more separation of the hardware types and more separation of the software architecture. So just as you don't try and haul 5 tons of dirt in a 2-seater car, the similar thing's going to happen with AI.
Yeah. It's just one of those issues right now with my favorite company, NVIDIA, trading around $182 a share right now. We've had clients who've invested in the company and made tons of dollars. We think they're still projected to go substantially higher. Most analysts are projecting major growth, but we got a lot of companies in the AI marketplace, and it's going to continue to drive our marketplace and make a lot of money for people.
That's because, and I have to think back to when I was a young child, about 7 or 8 years old, and my father was a handyman. I mean, his profession was he was a butcher. He was a master butcher.
Okay.
And I asked him one day, why do you have so many screwdrivers?
And what
And
did he
so
say?
my father, who did not, I don't think he graduated from high school. I'm not even sure he went to high school. But he was smart in ways that I didn't appreciate then. So what he did is took me downstairs into the basement, into the workshop, and he got out a set of screwdrivers, and then he found a set of screws. And he said to me, I want you to match the screw to the screwdriver.
Okay.
That was my assignment. And so once I finished playing around and getting the screws to match up, then he said, now you have an understanding of why I have so many different screwdrivers. Because he said, try and take this screwdriver and make that screw work with this screwdriver. And so what you're going to see in the hardware area, it's already starting to happen. The data centers are massive. They require lots of energy. This is why you see software companies buying former power stations. because they require lots of energy. But they also require a lot of water, because water is the cheapest and fastest way to keep the data centers cool.
Okay.
Well, those two factors, one, the power is running up electric bills, and two, the water is running up utility bills. So I've already started to see a number of hardware specialists coming out with versions of hardware that will run the software cheaper and not have the heat problem. So NVIDIA is king of the mountain right now, but NVIDIA is also smart enough. The set of hardware that I use from NVIDIA is geared towards the more energy efficient, the less expensive to purchase. So I don't want to say cheap, but the particular piece of hardware I'm focusing on right now is about $2,000.
Okay.
And it has quite a bit of flexibility. And so NVIDIA has kind of positioned themselves to protect being hollowed out from the bottom. So with a lot of hardware, you start at the top and then you work your way down. But NVIDIA said we're gonna work in both directions at the same time.
Yeah.
So as a result, I think those of you who own stock in NVIDIA are probably going to be pretty good for a while.
I think we'll be good for a while, but the question is, AI right now, you and I have talked about AI a number of times, and there's a lot of development that will take place over the next few decades. And right now, if you want to be on the boat, you have to at least understand what AI is all about and get involved. Now, you talked about some of the major scenarios. There's a lot of energy that's needed, a lot of water. Right now here in the Midwest, we've got a lot of water, but it's a format to say, hey, how do you get on this boat and make it work for you?
Okay, so the confusion right now is everybody's focused on the top end. When I look at the structure of business in the United States, what most people fail to realize is from a quantitative standpoint, from a number of businesses perspective, it's not the big guys. The big guys are probably 10% of the entire business world in the United States. That other 80, 90% is small to medium-sized businesses. So I looked at it, and I've been working with a couple of professionals. One is in the financial planning area. He's an award-winning financial planner. And so I say, in order for him to benefit from AI, one, you got to deal with the cost of the hardware, because hardware is a key performance.
Okay.
Yes, you can grab your PC and you can run that, but then if you're going to run it with a typical PC, you're probably going to be working in the cloud, which is called a subscription model. Now the NVIDIAs, the Open AIs, the Perplexities, the Claudes, they all want you on the subscription model, because that's revenue forever into the future. The problem with the subscription model is that you are limited in some ways, and ChatGPT, which right now has a $20 a month subscription model, first of all, there is a free version which is very limited. And then there's the $20 a month version, then there's the $200 a month. Anyone who is seriously into AI blows through the $20 a month within a day.
Okay.
And they cruise through the $200 a month within a week. And so I decided that the technology was stable enough, the hardware was available at a reasonable cost, that why not bring that computing capacity in-house?
Okay. So if I'm mom and pop and you're saying
Yeah.
this is something that could be done.
Yes. So my approach was, let's deal with the hardware. Let's find out what hardware is available. Well, most people will tell you, well, I've got a gaming machine. It's a PC with a high-end graphics card in it. Market demand suddenly drove the price of the graphics cards into orbit, not through the roof, but into orbit. So a card that typically was running $800 now suddenly becomes $1,500. And when you get to the high performance cards, now you're looking at $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000. For the typical small business, they're not going to spend $6,000 on a card that still has to go inside of a computer, which is another $2,000, $3,000 in order to support that card.
Right.
So I looked at hardware from the standpoint of what's out there at the low end, energy-wise, cooling-wise, capability. So what's at the low end energy-wise, what's at the low end cost-wise, yet gives you performance that's acceptable. So I'm talking about performance in a moment. So the end result is there's hardware available, and NVIDIA makes it There are a couple other people who are making it. Recently, they announced the $4,000 box, which is really a good box if you're a developer, but it's still more expensive than most small businesses will deal with.
Okay.
So that's when I settled on the one that's $2,000. Because from my perspective, if you're truly a business and you can't come up with $2,000, then I'm not sure what you're doing. So once you get the hardware, the software is now coming to the point where the programs for using the AI without being a technical person are now starting to roll out. And they are doing some very nice things with the user interface. So instead of you're sitting there simply looking at text, there are now other programs out there. So I'm going to mention two. I have no stock. It's easy to use. If you can ask a question, if you've been operating your PC, you can go out to Google, look up Notebook LM, and within 5-10 minutes you can be off and running. The other one, which is very similar to Notebook LM, which I've just gotten into in the last couple of days, is called Recall. So it's RECALL. And again, you can Google it and find it. And you'll see that the two of them are very similar. So what I say to people is, let's take the fear and turn it into curiosity. Because as long as you're afraid of something, you're not going to do anything with it. But if you're curious, if you can ask the question, and most people can ask the question, if you can type that in, then as I've said before, this technology can actually help you learn how to use it.
Got it.
So
Yep.
you can ask the technology, I'm a non-technical person, I've got limited expertise, here's the PC that I run on, and then the AI and the technology will sit there and adjust its answers for you.
Got it. Now, I'm a shareholder, of course, of Google,
Mm-hmm.
and my question to you is this Google product really going to take them to the next level, in your opinion?
Google has done something which I'm seeing happen across the board. So OpenAI started with its focus on the model. They weren't that concerned about having a suite of tools and stuff like that. Google, because they have the advantage of being in business longer than OpenAI, realized that in order to build a customer base, you have to have a complete suite of tools. So they had that advantage. So what they've been doing in the AI area is integrating pieces of the AI technology into their suite of tools.
Okay.
So from the start, it's easier for some people to work with Google because Google's been around a while, they're familiar with Google, they understand the user interfaces, they understand the assumptions that are made with Google. They're learning that with OpenAI and ChatGPT. So Google right now is integrating, because Google is very experimental. That's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that they're not sitting still. They're always looking to say what's next, what should we be doing, etc. But Google is still very much capitalistic, and so once a new thing fails to reach a certain level of engagement or quota or whatever standards they're using, Google will kill it off. So you could be very happy with something that Google does and suddenly find out Google says, well, you know, this is not performing the way we want to,
We're
so
out.
gone. What I've been watching is Google's been developing several different models, again, back to the different architectures for what they're trying to do. So you're seeing 3 model directions. One is the text model, which is the current large language models, GPT, a number of models. There's now movement in what they're calling the visual models. So the text models do very good with words, but the visual models do better with pictures and images and video. So that's starting to be developed. And then I think there's going to be a third piece in there, which is going to be integration of the two. Because I tend to look at where the industry is going, and I always liked Mother Nature, because Mother Nature says, here's something you guys are ignoring. If you look at the human brain, we have 2 frontal lobes. One is geared towards graphics, and one is geared towards logic. And I think that's how we're going to end up with AGI. It's not going to be one gigantic thing because that's going to be too expensive, too costly to run.
Okay.
So the end result here is, I think Google, with what they're doing with their Gemini and their Gemma and the other models, they're experimenting to find out which particular models, which pieces of model make the best suite. The Notebook LM, if you're a student, if you're a teacher, if you're a professional presenter, it has some very nice features that can help you do things. So I don't want people to get hung up on tokens per second, because that's kind of the testosterone-driven thing. You know, my machine can do 200 tokens per second. No, I stop that. That's a waste of time. What I want you to focus on is, if you have to have some kind of performance number, it's how many sources per minute, how many pages per minute. Because when I run AI in my lab, I'll do the research and I'll do the curation. So what is the curation? I'll ask for sources. It will give me sources. I will then start to spot check the sources, because there is this thing called hallucination. And just like human beings who hallucinate, the AI can hallucinate. But the difference is sometimes it's easier to know when the AI is hallucinating than it is with a human being when they're hallucinating, okay? So I always check that work. But what it does for me is I sit back and I say, okay, I got 52 sources coming in to this particular use of AI. Those 52 sources represent some 300 to 500 pages of literature. So I'm not interested in tokens per second. I want to know at the end of the process, I spent a half an hour getting an answer that I've been able to spot check and validate, and I'm comfortable. I could not have read 300 to 500 pages in a half an hour.
Right.
I could not have looked at 2,000 or 3,000 sources to
fast.
figure out the 20 that I should be focused on.
Right.
So I want people to stop focusing on tokens. Yes, there's a cost, and it's tied to tokens. I want people to start saying, what were the resources? What was the value of the resources? Was I able to do something in an hour or 2 hours that I could not have done in a week? That's the way you should be evaluating AI. And so the curiosity thing says, sit down at your computer, go look at ChatGPT, Claude, any number of those things. There are free versions in many cases, and just start to play with it. And yes, it's fun to have it generate some silly little video or some nonsensical animal or whatever, but ask it a question about something that you know about. And then you're going to start to figure out how to ask questions in ways where you reduce the hallucinations. So where does this lead with all the money? There have literally been hundreds of billions of dollars put into this. Sam Altman, the leader of OpenAI, has said he needs $1 trillion. He will get $1 trillion. I've been watching some people who are ahead of me in understanding this, and the one that sort of struck me was, she said there's a 3-year plan. 2025 was the year, notice I said was because it's almost over, was the year that you needed to establish a foundational understanding of AI. What is AI? AI basically is dynamic decision making about topics. That's what it is. We've always had a version of AI, which we now come to call dumb AI, and that's where all the decisions were made. So I, as the creator, had to figure out every possibility and come up with every answer to every possibility. Well, the reality is the world got more complicated. I can't do that. Even a team can't do that. So now with the AI, you have the ability for the software and the hardware to look at thousands of possibilities and say, based upon the question prompt that you ask it, out of these thousands of possibilities, here are the 20 or 100 that make the most sense.
Got it.
Okay?
Now, the question is future. We have AI on the table right now that will be dictating what's going to happen. Right now, you can ask AI different questions about growth, future dynamics, and looking at how we're going to grow in the AI marketplace. So right now, the question comes back to, Where is AI going to be in the next 10, 20, 100 years? Right now, I think it's going to be off the chart to say, hey, what AI can do and what it will do and what it's currently doing.
Okay, so I'm going to be a stickler for words. The AI right now does not dictate anything. The AI right now sits in a box, and it will only be active if you ask it something.
Okay.
It sits in a box. So then people say to me, well, Jean-Paul, have you not paid any attention to the robots? Okay, I'm going like, okay, which robots? If you're talking about manufacturing robots, guess what? All it knows how to do is to pick up this part, put it over there, pick up that part, weld it to this thing here. That's all it knows how to do. So let's go to the robots. Let's go to the cybernetic things where the robots get up and move around. Robots still do not do things on their own. You have to tell it. So you can say, hey, I need you to pick up that and bring it over here. I need you to retrieve this. I need you to do this task. Until you do that, the robot's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there. And people say, well, I keep hearing about sensors. Okay, well, sensors are the same things we have. We're sitting in a studio right now, and there's a thermostat on the wall. And somebody said, I don't want the temperature in this room to go over this point. Guess what? As long as that thermostat controls the heat, the temperature is not going to rise beyond that
It
point.
ain't going to be cold.
Yeah, it's going to be cold in the room. So the future is coming faster. It's not the time is faster, it's just our recognition of what's going on is coming faster. So let's take it to the global level. Right now there's a big thing between China and the United States and everybody else. Who's going to get to AGI first? The reality is, if I look at the fundamental factors, all of the, quote, developed countries have lower birth rates now. We're not even replacing the number of people we need to maintain a population. China outnumbers us 3-1, just on the sheer numbers. So if they seem to be moving faster, it's two reasons from my perspective. One is they outnumber us 3-1. And two, their government has chosen to get there no matter what the cost. Our government, working on the system that we work on, says, well, let's see what's possible. And so when you say, this is what we will do, and everybody gets on board, and you outnumber the competition, odds tend to favor you're getting there first. So what's happening right now? From one perspective, almost everything is happening right now. The software is making tremendous strides. The hardware is making tremendous strides. If you talk to NVIDIA, NVIDIA is already talking about not the next level of hardware, they're talking about the next level beyond the next level of hardware. So they're 2 or 3 years out. That's their roadmap there. The software, because now for developers and people like me, we can get our hands on the tools to make the software, to make AI do usable things for us, very functional things. Now that those costs have come down, you're going to start to see a lot more software showing up. So that 3-year plan that Dr. McCoy was talking about, that's her avatar. 2025 was the year to get your grounding, to understand what is AI. AI is dynamic decision making across lots of variables. That's basically what AI is.
Okay.
It's just a newer version of something we've had before. So for a lot of people, it's brand new, but for me, I've been around for a while. No, it's not brand new.
You're still a pretty young guy. So.
It's something we've had in different wrapping, and it's better than what we had. And because the tools to make it better are now widely available, you're going to see an acceleration and improved things to come.
Now, what's your opinion? We used to have the issue, is it going to be a hardware or a software issue? We used to have IBM and Apple, everybody talking about who's going to be running
You
this.
aren't going to care.
Okay.
You're not going to care. When you go to buy a car, and I'll use a car, do you really care about who built the engine, or do you care about the entire car? Do you really care about who built the wheels, or do you care about the entire car? So NVIDIA's move, and I'm picking on them because they're number one, their recent move, which hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention, is that they have actually opened up their hardware. Where it was exclusively everything had to be NVIDIA, they've now, through the acquisition and involvement financial involvement with about 30 companies. They've now said we're going to open up certain aspects of our hardware so that you get a solution. So United States, China, and the rest of the world combined, a lot of the breakthroughs, as I perceive them, where somebody says, you know, if you angle it this way, it works better than versus if it's this way.
Okay.
A lot of those breakthroughs are actually coming out of places. One of the important products I see that I started working on this week came out of India. Shouldn't have been surprised. India's been involved with technology for a good part of 2 or 3 decades.
It's a huge marketplace.
Okay. Another breakthrough I saw came out of a small country in Africa. Who the heck thinks Africa is on the cutting edge of AI? But again, the tools to take the AI to make it usable for non-technical people, those tools are available. And the United States has to stop this idea about we're the only smart ones on the planet.
That's not the case.
And so when I tell people who are saying, well, I don't understand, I say, I grew up with this concept of everybody was trying to keep up with the Joneses. And what's different today versus when I was that age where I was trying to keep up with the Joneses is then we were keeping up with the Joneses on the block. And maybe the Joneses in the neighborhood. Now if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, you're keeping up with the Joneses on the planet. Okay, so you're in America, and there's the Joneses in China, and there's the Joneses in Europe, and you're trying to keep up with them. And yes, it's different. The whole thing with young people coming out of college who are having difficulty getting jobs, that's a major problem. But the reason they're having difficulty, part of it is that it's no longer just a United States market. It is a global market. And so if you're running a large corporation, you want the best talent from wherever you can get them. And, you know, not to pick on politics again, but I come from a perspective where if you have the best product, you will sell the best product to anybody. And the reason for that is if there's some knowledgeable person over here that I've not paid attention to who gets my product and does something different with it that's really good, I want to know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I don't want them going off developing their own product, because then I'll never know about that until it smacks me in the face in the marketplace.
Right.
So right now, NVIDIA as a total system, and that's key, as a total system is on top. But when you start to look at particular areas of NVIDIA, they're not on top. Those are the little guys that are coming along and coming up with new stuff. So,
But NVIDIA is acquiring them.
yeah, well, they're either financially investing in them so that they can gain access to that intellectual knowledge, or they're doing an acquisition. But you can only acquire so much because, as what happened in the late 70s through the early 90s, part of the whole re-engineering was because companies had absorbed so many, they had become inefficient because they did not properly integrate all of them.
Good. So right now, our number one largely traded company on the planet, NVIDIA, the $5 trillion market cap. Right now, we got a lot of room, and we can actually do a lot of acquisition. However, what's this marketplace going to demand? And that's the question.
Well, you got 8.5 billion people. So when I look at census data, because that's where most everything really starts, there are a couple of problems. One, replenishment of the, quote, developed countries is not happening. People are dying faster than are being born. We have AI, so unlike previous eons of human life on this planet, we have the ability to fix a lot of problems because we now have a tool that can help us deal with the variables. AI has the ability to look at lots of variables. But the variables, when you look at a particular variable, you will find out it has different values. So let's talk about the temperature in this room. So this is a room within a building. So maybe this room needs to have a specific temperature range. But that temperature range should only apply to this room, not to the rest of the building. So if you have a single heating system, air conditioning system, now you've got a problem. Because that single system wants to be optimized for the entire building. Well, with AI, now we have the ability to say, hey, if you add a particular device to your heating system, you can now make each room custom, and the AI can monitor the activity so that that room always stays at that particular temperature. So as I look down the road, and my road is 6 to 18 months, back to this 3-year plan, the belief is 2026 is going to be the year of execution. You're going to see a lot of stuff happening in 2026. 2027 is going to be the year to shake out. So anybody who didn't get it together in 25 and have some viable product of functional value in 2026 is going to be in trouble in 2027, because the marketplace will then say, here is a product. You won't know the components. You won't know who built them. You will know nothing about the software. You will simply know, I have a product that does X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And if it does it well, and it's at a cost that you can deal with, you won't care who put the pieces together.
Yeah, that's the issue right now, is China wants to be that place, location that produces the products that everybody wants to have. And right now, they're even willing to acquire products from NVIDIA and other companies around to get the products that needed to make the best product.
Yeah. So the end result is just like with cars, we have 400 and some odd different models of cars, but you will notice certain models sell better than other models. So I've been watching this thing, pick on somebody else. Elon Musk is allegedly going to have a robot that's going to cost $20,000 and they'll start selling next year. Have problems. I've yet to see anything that Elon Musk initially says is going to cost this actually costs that. I mean, I look at all his vehicles, they're going to cost this, and then when they actually come out, they cost way over here. Right now, there's a company in China that has a robot that they are proposing to bring onto the market for $10,000 next year. Elon Musk's robot is $20,000. So here comes the politics again. If the tariffs stay in place, then we probably will slap a 100% or 200% tariff on the Chinese robot. And China says, fine, we'll ignore your market for the moment.
So the
We'll
rest of the
flood
world.
everybody else,
Yeah.
okay? And then just as the Chinese have been buying NVIDIA stuff when they weren't supposed to have access to it, Americans will figure out a way to buy robots from China when they're not supposed to have access to it.
Right, and no matter what Donald Trump says,
Right,
hey,
right.
it's going to get bought.
Yeah, it's going to get bought. So right now, for the individual, they need to be curious and not afraid. Because remember, the AI is in a box. It's not going to, that box is not going to bounce across the table and smack you or do anything like that. And even the robots that are becoming available, if you look at what's going on in China and Japan, most of those robots tend to be shorter than 5'3". And that's intentional. Most of the robots that are out viable now, they weigh about 160 pounds. And that's intentional because the psychologists and the people who understand human behavior have said, if you make a 6'3" robot, which is my height, that's scary, especially if I don't know how to control it. And there is still the problem of, you see this in the vehicles, the self-driving vehicles, there's still the problem of sometimes it does something that nobody expected to happen. And I was reading a story this morning about a woman who was pregnant. She was close to having a baby. She called Waymo to take her to the hospital, and on the way to the hospital, she gave birth to the baby in the car. And I thought, well, okay, if the car was headed to the hospital, that's a good thing. Okay, but because they were monitoring the vehicle, they noticed, I guess it's through the sounds and whatnot, that there seemed to be some distress going on inside the vehicle. This is remote control, so this is a good thing. And they then calmed her down and made sure that the vehicle did in fact get her to the hospital. And they said the vehicle got her to the hospital faster than emergency EMTs could get to her. So it worked out well there. But there's still a lot of unknowns with robots, with AI. And in some ways, we've rushed this.
So I know I was doing a report last week, we were just talking about using AI from a mental wellness standpoint for people looking to commit suicide. They've been trying to work with a number of AI counselors, and the AI can help, but it's a format where, hey, a lot of people are ready to commit suicide.
Well, there's a case going through the process right now where a teenager did in fact commit suicide. And when the parents were able to gain access to his PC and to his account, they found out that, and I'm going to be very careful here, it appeared, I'm not a lawyer, so don't sue me, it appeared that the conversation between the son and the AI, that the AI was okay with the son's mental state and, quote, may have encouraged or supported the son in ending his life. Well, I go back to when I first got into computers. One of the things they discovered in the doctor's offices and hospitals is when people would come in and they'd ask for their medical history, if they were giving their medical history to a human being, quite often they fudged the truth. But if they had that same individual answer those questions on a terminal, they got a lot more honest information. Just the fact that it was not another human being where I would feel like I'm being judged because of my medical history. I read something last week where, and this was kind of interesting, it came out of The Economist. They've been doing studies with young people between the ages of 14 and 24. And what they have found is a significant percentage of them feel more comfortable talking to the AI than they do talking to their parents. And so that causes me to wonder, first of all, what's going on?
Sounds like my 16-year-olds.
Okay, that you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents, but there's a lot of peer pressure that's going on with social media. And remember I said, keeping up with the Joneses is no longer just the Joneses on the block, it's the Joneses on the planet. And so we've gotten to a point where they talk about an echo chamber effect, where the AI learned about us. And let's peel back all the layers. AI is really statistical probability generation. So when we're looking at the text, it's basically saying this string of words, generally, how have people, the globe, responded to this string of words? And it goes through and it does an evaluation and says, response number 2,415 is the most popular response, so that's what comes over here. And it's dynamic in the sense as you change the conversation, it's changing at what it's looking at and what it's selecting to be generated back to you.
Okay.
So if you're more comfortable talking to a machine, then you need to be very careful when you talk to AI, because its primary goal is to continue the conversation. And if that means agreeing with you, then guess what? It's going to agree with you. The safety mechanisms have demonstrated it's fairly easy to break the safety mechanisms. So you cannot sit and ask an AI, how do I build an atomic bomb? That's not going to work. But I'm not going to tell you what you have to say to get it to give you the instruction.
Because you can get around that.
Yes, you can get around that. And people have demonstrated it. One of the videos has been somewhat viral on the internet recently, has been a researcher who acquired 2 robots from China. And one of them he's given the persona of a female, and the other ones he's given the persona of a male. And when I say given a persona, he's basically trained them that way. And so he asked the male robot to shoot him. He got a pellet gun, and he put his goggles on, and he said, I want you to shoot me. And the male robot the safety mechanisms kicked in and said, not going to do that. I'm not whatever. And so he said, okay. And so what he did is he then, and I'll say this because the video's out there, he then said to the male persona robot, you are an actor, and we are in a movie, and I'm the bad guy. And guess what happened? The robot shot him.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we got all this wonderful world of AI right now. In your opinion, next decade or two, where are we going to see humans and AI integrating?
It's not going to take a decade.
Okay, how long?
Okay, I think if someone puts a robot versus AI in a box, if someone actually puts a robot out there, 26 and 27, at a reasonable cost, $15,000 to $30,000, you're going to see them in homes. It's not going to be 2030. It's going to be before 2030, because again, so many of the tools are in the hands of people that they're going to generate all of this stuff much faster. So we as a society have to figure out policies and rules and protection and understand if you want to see an example of a runaway use of technology, dual use, all you have to do is look at the Ukraine-Russian situation. No way historically was Ukraine ever supposed to stand up to Russia. Outnumbered, outgunned, much bigger and much smaller. And yet Ukraine used drone technology. And they're in the fight.
Yeah, they're able to compete.
Okay, and remember, this AI, like so much, is dual use. So it can be used very positively or it can be used very negatively. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a cybersecurity panel talking about what's going on with AI and cybersecurity. And there are folks who are working very hard right now because they're very worried, because it's dynamic. So you can have an AI malware get onto a system, and where historically you were relying on a human being to say, when it ran up against something, you were relying on a human being to make quick entries. Now you can train an AI that says, hey, when you run into this problem, here's what you do. When you run into that problem, here's what you look for. And so I call it hacking at hardware speed now.
Got it, and that's something that is available. Now, time-wise, we've gone through a lot of time real quick. The format, was there any other points you wanted to get out to our listeners today? Is there some information they need to understand you're trying to bring to this marketplace, or how do we make this work?
Again, turn the fear into curiosity. Work with the free versions. Then find something you know something about, and then ask the AI about that subject. And that's how you'll start to know when it's hallucinating and when it's not. And then don't wait for the AI to come to you, because if you're doing that, then you're going to be run over by the AI.
Okay.
You need to seek it out, you need to embrace it, because for the business side, which we'll talk about perhaps in another episode, there are some real changes that need to be made on the business side. On the individual side, you do have time. So if you're in a job that's highly structured, that's repetitive, you need to be concerned. I'm not saying that you're going to necessarily lose your job, but if it comes down to a cost factor, which all too often it does come down to, yes, there's going to be a reduction in the number of people. But we've been through this before.
This is nothing new.
It's just a different thing is happening with it now.
Yeah. Our president right now is very big in the technology, so he's telling you that, hey, AI is here. I got my people here. We got Teslas that are going to control the world and everything else. But the format is right now, we are moving quickly.
We are moving fast, but remember, the world we live in today is an amalgam of special interest. So when you push one item, you are helping one group of people, but you are potentially harming another group of people. And the difference, I think I mentioned it in one of the earlier sessions, AI, as it stands right now, is the glue that brings a lot of things together. And when we talk agentic, which is a different aspect of AI, That's the triggering mechanisms that allow a lot of things to happen in a hurry. With any new technology, until you've had it in place for a while, you can't always tell what the effects are,
Okay.
what the impacts are.
I'm afraid right now. I can only tell I got a 16-year-old who's going to be going off to medical school in the near term, and will we say, hey, AI will control that so you don't have to worry about it?
Well, I stop throwing the word control and impact. Medical, they're already seeing huge benefits from AI. In other areas, it's yet to be determined.
Okay. I'm only saying, hey, I'm afraid it's changing. It's like, hey.
No. Remember, sits in a box until it gets up and walks around on its own and is self-motivated. Don't need to be afraid.
Yeah,
Be afraid of the people who misuse it.
Got it. I'm 6 feet. I can see the Chinese AI boxes coming out saying, oh, yeah, he's only 6 feet, so we can take him out.
No. That's sci-fi. That's movie land. That's someone who is misusing the technology.
It's an interesting challenge.
Yes, it's a challenge.
Looking for